I know I'm capable of a lot, and sometimes, don't get me wrong, there are days where you're definitely like, this sucks, this is so hard, I don't know what I've got myself into, but for the most part, it's actually really exciting to just validate your own dreams, for sure, which sounds so cliche, but it's right.
Building a business is tough, and doing it alone even tougher. Welcome to She Talks, your go-to podcast for raw, relatable, and ridiculously useful business advice. I'm Lisa Jones, mum of 5 and serial entrepreneur, here to share real stories and proven strategies to help you grow, scale, and thrive. Let's do this together. This episode is made possible thanks to ShipStation. Every day, tens of thousands of e-commerce sellers rely on ShipStation to solve the day-to-day challenges of importing orders and processing shipments. The multi-channel and multi-carrier software offers over 400 global integrations and partnerships, so you can directly connect to your existing technology and services to save money and reach your ambitions. Head to shipstation.com/au and enter the code SheComSuccess for a bonus 30 days access. Today, I'm chatting with Annabel Hay, powerhouse founder of Clutch Glue, the game-changing, problem-solving fashion essential that's taken the market by storm. Annabel's story is pure entrepreneurial magic. What started as a eureka moment in a nightclub turned into a globally recognized brand with a $10 million plus turnover per annum, all while she was still working full-time as a construction manager. Holy bejeepers. But as you'll hear in today's episode, success hasn't come without its challenges. We're talking work-life balance, or the lack of it, the reality of rapid growth, the roller coaster of retail partnerships, and what it's really like to go viral. Annabel also shares the wild behind-the-scenes story of her Shark Tank pitch and why she walked away from an investment deal after being told she had the best pitch in the show's history. If you've ever wondered what it takes to build a category-defining brand, scale internationally, or just survive the daily chaos of running a business, then this is the podcast for you. Let's dive in. So, Annabel, women start businesses for all kinds of reasons. More freedom, the chance to be creative, maybe they're solving a problem, or maybe it's to set themselves up financially. Or, well, really, all of the above. I want to know, why did you start Clutch?
Clutch was honestly the solution to a problem that I just had every single day when it came to using fashion tape. And I think always early on in my life, I was like, it'd be really cool to start a business, but like, what would I do? There's so many possibilities. And then when I finally had that sort of eureka moment when I was 18 at a club called Chinese Laundry in Sydney, I was absolutely fed up with how ineffective fashion tape was and also unsustainable it was. And it was at that moment where I was like, it would be so much easier to glue myself into my clothes. And from that moment forward, I was like, all right, we can get men to the moon. I'm just going to go ahead and invent a glue. Also in that moment, I was like, what's the worst that can happen? I'd rather die trying. So let's just give it a go. And if it can't be done, it can't be done. But here we are.
And I love this, and we'll talk about this as a theme through the potty, but you had a really good, successful job as a construction manager, which I suppose has given you some incredible project management skills. But I mean, would it be fair to say or deduce from our convo even so far that you aspired not to be employed, but to be self-employed? Was that part of it, like owning your own life?
Totally. I think that there was, I probably was very naive in my understanding of actually what it was like to be self-employed. I think that my impression of being self-employed is incredibly different to now what I believe it to be. I think a lot of people sell you've got so much autonomy and you're in charge of your own life and your schedule and you can work anywhere in the world. Like, how good is that? Yes, all of those things are right. But I would also say that there are a lot of things that people fail to consider in terms of, I actually have absolutely no work-life balance at all. All I do is work. I've got nothing that is a stopgap, even just like a commute between me, going between my home and an office. And I'm finding that I'm actually more so now at the mercy of my customers rather than at the mercy of a boss, which is an entirely different sort of emotional burden that you do take on when it comes to launching your own business. So no, I wouldn't trade it for the world, but it is a lot harder in a lot of respects. working for yourself than it is, a general 9 to 5, that both have their own general pros and cons.
Oh my God, let's break that down because I could not agree more to everything you've just said. Plus, we could probably slap a whole bunch of other topics at the wall and they'd stick about what's not good to be self-employed. And in fact, this is the new season of She Talks podcast with me. And this year, I'm really focusing heavily on scaling businesses whilst maintaining balance. And I feel like this is just such a complicated topic, even on its own, because balance in having your own business doesn't fucking exist. You've got a few topics on the head there, but I would throw lots more out there, like cash flow problems, paying yourself, the boundaries between work. Like my husband and my daughter are constantly at me around, Mum, get off your phone. They call me thumbs and the decompression bit. So let's break a few of those down for the beautiful ladies listening today. Like decompression. One of the problems with working for yourself is a lot of us work from home. I'm presently recording this podcast in my spare room, and I have just signed a lease for an office in Burleigh Heads on the Gold Coast so that I can get out of the house every day, because I can't do this not having a decompression period between work and home anymore. It doesn't work.
First of all, congratulations on signing a lease. Like there are so many things that I think people don't talk about enough, and this is especially one of them. When people are like, oh, you're starting your own business, like you're going to open your own office. I'm like, with what money? Who's paying for that? Me? Like, I don't know how much money you think that I'm making on paper, but it's not what you think it is. So like,
I'd rather pay myself before I paid for an office.
Without a doubt. So congratulations. That is a really big step, and that's something to really be celebrated. So good on you for that. My boundaries when it comes to working from home. Look, I think that there's a few things that I try and do. I'm not going to sit here and say that I have really any boundaries, because I don't. Like last night, for instance, my boyfriend's in bed next to me, just watching something nice on his computer, and I'm here replying to emails at 10:30 at night. But like, there are some things that you really just need to do in order to keep up with different time zones, to be honest. That's probably our main struggle being an international business, is that there's just emails flying everywhere. When I wake up in the morning, I'm already behind. So that's always, not a nice feeling. But I would say that I actually rely on the people around me to get me out and get me to stop. My boyfriend is really good at this. He'll always try and make sure that we've got a plan at night, whether that's a plan to cook together, whether that's a plan to go out, whether it's to go for a run or go to the gym together, whatever it might be. He's really good at just getting me away from my desk, even though sometimes it is met with, screaming, crying, throwing up. And then on top of that, I think because I've got now a team of 2 other people, I've got my sister, who's my CMO, who we all know and love, Lucy, and we've also got now a COO, Ollie. What we try and do is when we're all not traveling around doing our various responsibilities, we actually all live within about 15 minutes of each other. So we do try and have like at least 1 or 2 sessions a week at someone's house, wherever that might be, just to kind of make things a little bit more interesting, because it feels like Groundhog Day a lot of the time when I'm just sitting at my computer just punching stuff out. And it is also quite funny when people ask, they're like, what does your day-to-day look like? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I did today, but I didn't eat because I had no time. Like, that seems to be the reality of what I do.
It's so true. I've just had to start going to the gym for the 5 a.m. class, which is like so debilitating, because all night I wait for the alarm clock to go off at 4:30. But I know, and it's ridiculous because I'm self-employed and I have 44 staff over here at SheCom. I should absolutely be able to go to the gym whenever I want, but I literally can't. So I want to ask you if you have perhaps the same tendency as me as to why we do this. Let's look at the why. So, we're going to talk a bit more about Clutch in a minute and how freaking awesome the business is. But I feel like there's a part of this as women we need to dissect here. And I would go so far as to say, for me, it's because I fucking love my business. Because we just coined this term in the office this week. I am entrepreneurially aroused by my business. I literally can't stop working in it because I'm that excited about what we're doing.
Yeah.
Is that what it is for you as well?
100%. Like, I get really excited, and I'm sure it's the same for you, when the goalpost keeps moving is actually the best problem to have. I know that like at the time you're like, cool, we just got an absolutely massive win. This is everything that I could have wanted in life. And then 5 seconds later, you're like, okay, well now I've got to do X, Y, and Z. And now my goalpost, moves to here and whatever and the whole thing. But like, that just gets me going. When the business keeps growing with me, that is just kind of like, right, like the business, it's moving with me. I'm obviously doing something right because it's growing. And that to me is probably the most exciting part. I just get so excited and it makes me feel confident as well. I think that there's like a lot to say about invalidating your own sort of delusions of grandeur when it comes to the things that you think that you're capable of. And I know I'm capable of a lot. And sometimes, don't get me wrong, there are days where you're definitely like, this sucks. This is so hard. I don't know what I've got myself into, but for the most part, it's actually really exciting to just validate your own dreams for sure, which sounds so cliche, but it's right.
No, but it's true, isn't it?
It is
a roller coaster. It is a roller coaster. And I think what I love about this podcast is that we have the opportunity and perhaps the obligation to our listeners to show them that it isn't just all peaches and cream, that it's actually a lot of really hard work. And as you have just said, I would say that in an hour of a day, I would probably have a couple of hours each day where I think my life is just awful, a couple of hours a day where I think I have the best life on the entire planet, and then a whole bunch of variations of those. It isn't even just like days of the week. It's like hours of the day.
100%.
Experience.
It's incredibly volatile. So, like, funnily enough, my partner got me an Aura ring for Christmas, and it is hilarious to see my blood pressure, like my heart rate just go like vroom, 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 like all day. It keeps on sending me notifications being like, you're really stressed. I'm like, yes, yes, I am. It's like, you should have a break. Not right now. Now's not, read the room or up. I am not leaving my desk. But, you know, it's just a part of the grind, I think, of it all. It's just kind of, it's funny, it's exciting, it's exhausting, it's exhilarating. It's a roller coaster. You're right.
What have you learned in this space? Because like you just said it then, like you can't leave your desk until that fire's put out. And I want to say to our listeners, by the way, that the reason an Aura ring, which by the way is on my hit list to get to, I don't know if I want to see the stats. So to be clear, the data might scare me, but it's every 10 minutes of every day, it's like a lion is chasing us, right? So our adrenal and our cortisol, and it spikes because we're like, oh my God, there's this problem to solve in our business. And we can't leave our desk until we've solved it. And that's why my husband has to literally physically remove me from the office at like 6 o'clock each night to say, you're done, come and eat your dinner. What have you learned in this space to manage yourself?
Well, I think that reminding myself that sure, sometimes things feel like an absolute catastrophe to me. Is that actually going to fundamentally change tomorrow? And a lot of the time the answer is no. Give or take, there are sometimes some really shitty things that happen that are like, right, like, you know, this is now the rest of my week put into resolving that issue. But I think I've become desensitized to problems that I've definitely had in the past. So you get so used to, I only now get stressed about things that I haven't overcome before. If there's problems, day-to-day problems that I obviously have every single day, but because I've had them so many times, I don't even think that it's a problem anymore. It's just a task that I need to do. It's only ever when I've got something new that I'm like, oh my God, the world is ending. And then like normally once I've overcome that issue, I'm like, okay, well, that wasn't so bad. And now, sorry for freaking out everybody. And now I'm just going to keep going. But like that to me is always a reminder where I'm like, it's not a problem. It's just learning. Just keep going through it. Wade your way through the mud and you'll get through to the other side. But I think my main advice to myself is always just hit it front on. Like never avoid the issues, because otherwise I'm going to be worrying about it for a lot longer than I need to. More often than not, my problems as well are like 15, 20 minutes of just being like, oh, turns out that I can just do it like that. And it's, you know, not as hard as I thought it was.
Isn't it like the monster under the bed syndrome? It's like we've regained some of this childish thing where you're like, I have the same problem where I'm like avoiding an email to open it because I saw the first line and I'm like, don't look. And then I'm like, no, I'm turning this into a monster under the bed. Read it. And then you're like, it turns out that person was saying something really great. And I was 100% something that doesn't exist.
100%. Like sometimes it is just down to like a miscommunication. And normally it's because I'm reading things at such pace where I'm like, and then I go back and look at it and I'm like, oh, yep, sorry, I totally misinterpreted that and it's actually not that serious.
And have you noticed, I would love to get your take on this too, but for me, I've really noticed a correlation between cash flow problems and me not feeling like I'm resilient to deal with day-to-day fires. When I feel like money is low, everything that comes at me feels like a fire. When 100%. Money is like super flush in the bank, then I'm like, there's nothing that can get me right now. And I let everything kind of roll off me. And perhaps there's like a different approach I take to even solving the problems in those moments. What's your experience been with that?
Yeah, cash flow is always front of mind for me, always. I literally this morning before this call, I was like, literally, we got our BAS return for like December and whatever. And I was like, cool, okay. You know, I was looking through the whole profit and loss thing. And, you know, that's always just like an interesting thing to just be like, you know, sort of thought that we might have been looking a little bit more green than that, or, whatever it might be. It's quite sobering to look at. But I think that, what I try and do is just like almost always feel like we have no money, because then that gives me some really creative solutions to try and overcome things that might be a little bit more, creative and cheaper than just throwing money at the wall. There are sometimes problems though where you're just like, that's just going to take money. For instance, legal issues, never skimp out on those. Good lawyers are worth their weight in gold. Do not take shortcuts when it comes to that. But sometimes there's some more creative solutions to different problems that you might have, whether those are shipping issues, whether those are just like, resourcing issues, whatever it might be. Sometimes it's good to just write them down, and then like I like to mind map things, and then I'm like, what are the various different ways that I might be able to overcome this? And then like more often than not, there's a path of least resistance. It's actually not as expensive as you might think. But yeah, legals, never skimp out on that.
Never skimp on the lawyers. I know, unfortunately, IP and business legal matters can be very, very debilitating if you don't handle them correctly. Have you got any examples you could share with us?
Yeah, 100%. Like when we did our cap raise, so end of last year, we did the largest FMC cap raise ever for a pre-seed round, which is kind of insane to think that happened. All these things that like happened to me, I actually don't think that they happened to me. Like I kind of think of myself as this like fictional character now, where I'm just kind of like, oh, that's not me. That doesn't happen to me. But yeah, we did that cap raise. And anyway, as you would know, you sort of like then need to redo your cap table, you resubmit all your documents to ASIC, you update your registers, all of that annoying admin things that you need to do. And my lawyers do that. And this was sort of the back end of last year, where then ASIC were like, we've gone through your records, and back when you first made the entity in 2021, you made a really brief admin error, and you're actually going to have to come to court to tell us that was an admin error. I was like, what? And I was freaking out. I was like, I've got to jail. It's all over. Anyway, again, then that was just ASIC being, just picking up on, I guess, doing their job. Like, obviously that's their job, is to make sure that everything is, correct. But I find then once like it went to the judge was like, okay, that's fine. It's all right. Everybody makes mistakes, and you were like 18 at the time. You had no idea what was going on. It's fine. Hilarious. Anyway, so that was an interesting scare that I had not that long ago. So again, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but like I always find too, talking about sort of being in the trenches, people sort of don't really care too much about. I think people like to just celebrate the wins, and people engage with the highlight reel more than they do the actual day-to-day depths of hell that is my day.
So wait, Annabelle, are you trying to tell me you're only like 22 or 23?
Right now, I'm 26. So
26. Okay, got it. So you registered it before 2021, I see.
Yeah, and obviously I had no idea what I was doing. And also, you don't know, like when you register a company, you're like, this more likely, like this isn't going to work out. That like statistically, this is actually like probably not going to be a big thing. And obviously the good part happened to us, and, it obviously grew into an incredible business, and we keep growing. But yeah, it's quite funny to be picked up on an admin error where I obviously had no idea what I was doing, and I was probably hungover trying to just like get a task done. So anyway, that was a bit sobering. It was funny. Now we laugh about it, but it wasn't funny at the time.
No. And I'd love to know, I mean, I've got so many questions I want to ask you, but I want to go back a little bit to the fact that you've built Clutch while you were still working full-time as a construction manager. How on earth have you navigated both at the same time?
Well, to me, it didn't make any sense to quit my day job, because I was like, I've got to pay for this somehow. I paid 160 grand of my own money over 4 years to invent and patent and launch Clutch. And it just didn't make any sense. Like, how was I going to live if I had to pay for this? And then I don't know when the revenue is actually going to start coming in. To me, it actually gave me more freedom, because it meant that I was able to get it right. I didn't feel like I was ever rushed to launch something to the market, which I think ultimately put us in really good stead. And everything that we did was incredibly fleshed out and considered before it reached the market, which then once we reached the market, we sold out globally within 3 months. And then it was just like the most, insane journey from there. But what people don't know is that only until very recently, end of last year, was when my sister and I actually quit our full-time jobs and came on board full-time. Because what happened was, these are all good problems to have, but the business ended up sort of skyrocketing really quickly. And then it was like, well, I've got to make more stock. I've got to like build a bunch of good like platforms, resources. Like people fail to consider like how much sort of my operational platforms costs, like not just Xero, but you've got then like inventory management systems. You've got like freight management systems that global forwarders, domestic forwarders, whatever it might be. Then when you're supporting marketing campaigns, when you get into retailers, like it was just like money going out the door. And it took a really long time to kind of just like be confident with cash reserves that then I was able to take money from the business when it wasn't better used elsewhere to actually have a product to sell. I think people a lot of the time think like, oh, you work for yourself and, you hire yourself. But where's the money coming from? Like I need to obviously have a product to sell and something that's scalable in order to feel confident enough that I can take money from the business without it actually fundamentally affecting our operations. So maybe call me conservative, but I think that it was actually the most sensible thing I've ever done in my life is not get too ahead of myself when it came to whether the business could support my sister and I financially.
I love that so much. And I think it's really important if you are listening to the podcast right now and you have been thinking of launching a business, or perhaps you've launched a product, but you still have kept your day job, why it's a really important key component here. As Annabel just hinted, the thing that is really dramatically epic about this is that when you need the money from a product brand, you essentially strangle it in desperation. You make it have to bring sales to your front door mat like you're cat dragging a mouse up, because you're like, if I don't get that food, I'm going to die, literally.
Yeah.
So one amazing thing about keeping your day job is that you had that desperation removed and you were able to make probably far more calculated decisions about the business in a way that has really allowed you to leverage. I mean, 10 million a year revenue already is phenomenal, and many women with their e-com brands could only dream of that kind of revenue. So like massive kudos to you, but such an interesting piece we don't talk about enough here about how those two things go hand in hand and perhaps actually enhance it rather than detract it.
Absolutely. And like these things are entirely like your prerogative. Like if you want to quit your day job and go full time and all in, by all means, I'm not here to preach, to suffer in silence and do both things. I think what really worked for myself and also my sister was that, we were working sort of 16, 18-hour days for at least 2 years while Clutch was sort of first launched. But our bosses knew that. They knew that we were doing Clutch. We weren't keeping anything from them. And I think that that's a really critical thing, is to always have that communication with your day job that, you've got other things going on, so they understand that. And honestly, my company were just always so gracious and understanding about everything. And they also just really encouraged me to chase my dreams. And I think that that kind of support has been remarkable, to be honest.
One of the biggest problems I hear from businesses that start to scale up is I can't keep track of all my parcels. If you're growing your e-com brand, the last thing you need to do is be focusing on importing orders from different platforms and trying to remember which parcels need to be sent with which courier to get the best prices. And that's why I love ShipStation. Their seamless integrations and their super simple dashboard makes it easy to see all of your orders at a glance, and you get up to 70% off Sendle, Couriers Please and Aramex rates. If you're ready to automate your shipping, go to shipstation.com/au and enter the code SheComSuccess for a bonus 30 days on top of their existing 30-day trial. Now, let's head back to the episode. Incredible. Now, I want to go back. You talked about Clutch going viral within the first 3 months. I'd love to know, and I'm sure everybody listening would also love to know, like, what do you think was the reason it went viral that quickly?
I think it just found market fit so quickly because people were like, oh my God, this is the smartest thing in the world. A lot of it was like, why don't I think of this? This is really clever. And two, whereas it's been all my life, fashion tape sucks. I think that it resonated so quickly and easily with the female market. To this day, we still get hate from men constantly, which was a very fun TikTok series that I've been doing recently, which is replying to hate comments that men leave in our videos. And it's mostly them being like, just wear sensible clothes. But like, Clutch isn't just for your boobs. The first viral video that we had was actually me clutching a spaghetti strap to my shoulder so that it didn't fall off my shoulder. And I think that that's when people were like, oh, this is something that also fashion tape can't do. I can't use fashion tape to glue my socks on so that they don't fall into my shoe. I can't use fashion tape to stick my bike shorts on. As in, Clutch just does all of these things that you sort of never really had a solution for to begin with. That's also been quite an uphill battle when it comes to retail partnerships is because the funny problem that we had was that buyers didn't really know where this sat because it was a category of its own. So that was an interesting sort of hurdle that we had to jump through. But obviously, you know, there was enough support from retailers as well that they understood that there was, you know, it was filling a gap in the market, which in this day and age is hard to do. I think that like filling a gap in the market, we all think that, you know, everyone's invented everything. Like surely everything's been done before, but you never know. You never know. You just kind of have to go for it and see what you can find out, or just do it better than the person before.
This is the thing that always astounds me. You know, I built an eco nappy brand and had a very similar, I suppose, idea to you where like, why doesn't this exist in the world? And I think that a lot of the really big FMCG products that we're used to acquiring in chemists and supermarkets have been created by male-oriented companies. I think that a lot of the really big FMCG product out they've been bringing out for 20, 30, 40 years and no one has reinvented it. So,
well, the crazy part is too, the crazy part with this too is that like they have bigger budgets and they have market share. So they have that visibility. They're able to pepper you with ads and ads and ads and ads and ads. And then any kind of competitor, they end up just sinking because they're like, oh, well, actually that's a good idea. I'm going to steal it. And I think that that is the hardest part at the moment, especially in retail, is that retailers expect you to compete on the same terms that really large retailers do, which is why it's so hard for small businesses to grow. And this is sort of the main thing that I'm just really passionate about talking about, is conscious consumerism at this point in time.
I love that. And we'll flick over now and talk about the big retailers, but I have to tell you two things firstly. Like 1000% agree with you about the real estate space in, say, Woolworths, for example. So with my nappy brand, we got offered the opportunity to go on shelf, but they warned us we're going to sit next to Huggies. Kimberly-Clark are going to throw them on sale 50% of the year. So week on, week off, 100% of that is borne by the company who puts the product on the shelf.
100%. You pay for the promotion. Yeah.
And then you've got to be putting at least 150 grand a year into our magazine. And so suddenly you look at the numbers and you think, well, that's actually not attractive for me as a company. There's a really big risk.
It's not feasible at all.
Yeah, it's not feasible. The second thing I was going to say before I ask you the question is, I literally, when I knew we were interviewing you, this was like in December, I was like, I need Clutch Glue. So I thought, I can't wait for it. I had an event to go to. I need to buy it on a shelf. So I called like 3 Pricelines and they were all sold out. I couldn't buy it. Amazon wasn't going to arrive in time. So like, I love that clearly retail space is working for Clutch. So tell us about your retail shelf experience.
Yeah. So for us, like we knew that there was sort of 3 ways that were our distribution strategy when it came to Clutch. Obviously, we needed to prove our market fit on e-com first. So, and that was the easiest thing to do. Let's just build a Shopify store, see how it goes. I think a lot of people also don't realize that I think for the first year and a half, I was fulfilling the orders out of my bedroom. I didn't have a 3PL. I didn't do any of that. I used to just invite my friends over on the weekend and we used to like pack our little parcels and, you know, do that. It's actually, we laugh about it now. And those are the kind of the things that we actually probably enjoyed the most out of anything that I've done so far. But yeah, when it came to retail strategy, we knew that we sort of wanted to hit 3 main channels, which was pharmacy first. Pharmacy makes the most sense for us. It's where people go shopping for things like Clutch and solutions to wardrobe, solutions to, you know, skincare, all of that. That's kind of just like where people are a little bit more inclined to look out. Yeah, more prescriptive, absolutely. And then we also really want to do convenience. It's not a product that you need until you do, as you said. And it's one of those things where it's like, where's a 7-Eleven? Where's an Easy Mart? Because I need it right now. And it's 11 p.m. and nothing else is open. So, you know, I need to get it now. So that's a sort of distribution channel that we're trying really hard at the moment to get into. We tried grocery, wasn't for us. Really hard to grow in grocery, especially being a sort of single, double SKU thing. So we've sort of shied away from the grocery side of things. So for us, our 3 sort of main strategy now is pharmacy and convenience, and then also e-com. Grocery, I could speak all day about it. We didn't have a very good time. I don't know whether I should or shouldn't say this, but we can talk later as to whether we want to cut this out of the podcast. But essentially what happened was we ended up getting ranged in Woolworths for 6 weeks for a 6-week trending end cap. We're meant to be at the end of the aisle across 420 stores across Australia. And it was from the 13th of November to the 26th of December was a 6-week trial. We got everything there on time. They gave us the purchase order and required it to be delivered in 2 weeks. So I had to go and make all of my stock, including all of my packaging, my product, which takes days to make, and then get it all to a Woolworths DC. I ended up pulling a rabbit out of my hat and getting it done, and then delivered it all on time in full. Everything was fine. And then it came to launch day, and I was like, went to a bunch of different Woolworths that, we were told would be in there, and it sort of wasn't in there. And I went, okay, like I'll give them a couple of days just to sort of like phase it in. And then what happened was, after a couple of weeks, we started getting our sales data back, because at this point in time, we were selling about 6 units per store per week in Priceline, which is well above what you need to be doing in any retail store. And we got the data back from Woolies saying that we'd only sold like maybe 12 across Australia. And I went, what? I was like, that's not making any sense. I was getting my extracts back from Priceline and they were still crushing it. They were sending us purchase orders for thousands and thousands and thousands of units a week. And I went, right, like something funny is going on here. We emailed the buyers and I was like, are we sure that it's on the shelf? And they were like, oh, actually, yeah, good point. Maybe it's not on the shelf. And then 3 weeks into this 6-week trial, we ended up sending an external auditing company to go and see. It turns out that it was only in 40% of the Woolworths stores that they said it would be in after 3 weeks. And in the first 2 weeks, only 10% of those stores had it out. So, yeah, we ended up losing about 3 weeks of our 6-week ranging sort of test. Then it got to 4 or 5 weeks down the track, only about 60% of stores had it out. And then by the end of the NCAP, the results obviously weren't great, and Woolies were not too happy with us, but we weren't too happy with Woolies because they didn't put us on the shelf. How can you trial us if it turns out you didn't put it on the shelf? So that was an incredibly sobering experience when it came to grocery ranging and how difficult it is to sort of make sure that your placement's right, that you're ranged correctly. Yeah, that was a mission and a nightmare. And it ended up, we lost from that about $100,000 because we had to send in auditors. We had to buy our stock back. We did marketing campaigns to push people into store. But of course, that was all wasted money because no one could find it in store. So very, very, very hard lesson to learn. But, it's a lesson and we know that we won't go back there. So
I'm so sorry to hear that. And I think it's the most incredible lesson for the beautiful ladies listening today that just because we think Woolies or Coles are like the grand kahuna of having a product on shelf, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right financial decision for your business. And
100%.
For me, with my nappy brand, we actually went no to both. We ended up sticking with e-commerce and other more retail models like the small Whole Food stores and the pharmacies because I actually value their businesses and their business models. They're usually franchised and locally owned, and on an ethical level, they're more people I align with anyway.
Absolutely. And just easier to communicate with. Like it sort of didn't seem like, to me, there was always this sort of underlying tone of like an us and them, like you're the enemy and vice versa, which is totally not true. Like let's generate some creative solutions together to make this work for both of us. So to be honest, it was just a really disappointing experience. But as I said, it was a lesson. And now that we've tested that avenue and know it's not for us, it's okay. We sort of lick our wounds and we move on.
What about Amazon? Is Amazon something that's on your...
Amazon's hilarious to me. Amazon is so funny and this is so front of mind at the moment. So in Australia, like, I don't know, Amazon's Amazon, right? Like we're listed on Amazon, but it actually then just gets imported into our Shopify and then it all gets fulfilled like through our 3PL in Australia. Now, when it comes to the US, someone convinced me to put it on Amazon US and I went, okay. And I was like, there's no difference. You buy it from me, like on Shopify, you buy it from Amazon. I'm paying Amazon a fee to sort of have it listed there and stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to give Jeff Bezos all of my money. Anyway, somebody was like, just trust me on this. Can you please just put it on there and see how you go? Yeah, it was pretty crazy, actually. I couldn't have been more wrong in terms of my impression. We, at the moment, sell, like, we don't even market our Amazon store, but I've realized that consumers actually go to Amazon now instead of Google to buy a product. Before we even listed on Amazon, one of, like, the key search terms, the trending search term on there was clutch glue, and we weren't even on there. We weren't even listed on there. So we knew that there was sort of some power in that. Anyway, the other day I sent a replenishment top up to Amazon US, and it said, we believe that you should send us about 715 mil units, I think was the prediction that they gave us. So I sent them 700 and it sold in a day. I went, right, okay, we should probably keeping a closer eye on that one, because also Amazon Prime is, it's all just so big over there. And I just I'm not from America. I don't know how that market works, but yeah, again, that was a good lesson to learn. So as much as we have hard lessons, we also have good lessons.
And opportunities. And what I love about your product is you're a hero product brand. So there's a lot of ladies out there who will have, wide SKU lines because they have lots of products, or perhaps it's a clothing label and they've got collections and new ranges. And other ladies might be resellers or distributors of other people's products. But your product is a hero product brand, and you have the opportunity to absolutely smash it in the US. A couple of our she-com brands that I'll tell you more about off camera, but going gangbusters in the States. So Annabel, after appearing on Shark Tank, which I want to talk about now, you got told you had the best ever pitch on Shark Tank. But then you did the most insane move and you off camera post-production rejected their offer. I want to know what happened. Talk us through this.
Yeah, so the whole idea of Shark Tank was just to go on for marketing, PR strategy. I think that everybody does that, obviously. When it comes to the actual investment, I didn't really know too much about what they would be asking for and what their terms would be on their investment. It's not just, give me your 200 grand and then I got 200 grand in the bank and all happy sailing. There's a lot of things that go behind the scenes to make that happen. For me, I actually went on with an undervalued business. The actual valuation of the business was $2 million for 20% of the business, not 200 grand for 10, which is, I think, what I went on and pitched for. The reason I did that was because I just wanted them to not talk about the commercials for 45 minutes. Let's just talk about how good this product is for 45 minutes. And that's exactly what happened. I practiced that pitch, put in about 1,000 hours for that pitch. It was a mammoth effort from everyone involved. My sister and also one of our marketing sort of strategy advisors, he was like, let's put on these mock Shark Tank nights. And I was like, oh my God, okay. And he was like, I think we had 3 catch-ups a week on the actual pitch, honing in on what the wardrobe malfunction would be, what the models would be doing, who the models were going to be, and what we wanted the set to look like, and all of these things. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, but it sort of was about 6 months of planning before it was time to actually film the episode. Yeah, so went on the show, ended up doing the best Shark Tank pitch of all time, which was crazy. Again, as I mentioned before, it feels like I'm just a fictional character. That's not me. That's just that's her. And then off the show, about 2 weeks later, you start sort of hearing some, bits and bobs about all right, you're going to hear from our legal team soon and Davey and Rob sort of reached out and I was like, hey, actually, can I just give you a call? And they were like, okay. Called Davey and I was like, hey, we're actually doing a real cap raise, which is totally the truth. We were doing a real cap raise. We had a bunch of venture capital firms that were really interested and a bunch of other strategic investors that were really interested in this new evaluation, which is what it was. Would you be interested in reinvesting at that valuation? They went, yeah, maybe actually, definitely, let's take a look. And I had a lead investor. So what that means is the person that's sort of putting in the most money, they decide what the terms are sort of within the round, and then everyone else just follows those terms. And I sent them the term sheet and they were like, not sure. Can make it work though if you give me founders shares. And I went, no. No. I was like, you're not a founder. I'm a founder. I've been doing this for 2 years already. And I spent so much of my own money and time trying to do this. That seemed like a slap in the face, to be totally honest. Also, what that does is set a precedent that an investor's been able to get founder shares. So therefore, every investor should be able to get founder shares. There's a big ripple effect that you need to be mindful of when it comes to giving people something that they actually aren't entitled to. And that to me, I was like, all right, that's fine. Well played, Sharks. Well played. You're Sharks. You got to act like one. And that's when I just went, you know what? I've got some people that are more suitable to be on my cap table. So I'm going to do that instead. They respected that. They knew that. And to this day, I still talk to them. I still chat to them. I've got a direct line to both of them. If there's any questions that I have, they are incredibly gracious and always help me, which has been honestly really wonderful, that I seem to have only positives from the experience, which isn't the case for everyone. And I'm very mindful of that. And I don't want to come here and say that, it's going to be all sunshine and rainbows for everyone, but I'm really grateful that it turned out the way that we sort of hoped it would.
I love that story. Thank you for sharing it, because I think there's a lot of ladies that, certainly here, even in SheCon, we have a bunch of ladies who've had incredible experiences on Shark Tank, not necessarily post going live that it has resulted in the deals going ahead through due diligence. A lot of them don't go ahead. But you don't realize on the show, let's be clear, that's just not a thing. People assume that if they've said yes, that it's done, but it's not the case at all. But I think that the leverage that you can get as a brand, the authority and the virility, like I'm assuming you're going to say would do it again and again and again for that.
100%. I mean, it's insane. To me, I was like, who goes on free-to-air TV? I was like, who really watches free-to-air TV, especially nighttime TV? Breakfast TV is a bit different, like Sunrise, morning show, like those are all great things. But it's like really like, a Wednesday night, like Shark Tank, I don't really know whether this is going to be amazing, but like whatever, what a cool experience. Then sure, like I was right, like definitely in terms of the sort of free-to-air TV aspect of it, the viewership's not huge. But what I didn't consider was how big the social element to it would be. There's one video that firstly originated from Davey's TikTok. On his TikTok, I think it has about 55 million views. And across it actually accounts for, it's got 4.1 million likes on it, which is over half of his total amount of likes on his TikTok page comes from our video. Same on Shark Tank Australia's video, over a total, more than half of their total likes actually come from just our one pitch video. And then across our socials as well, we have over 200 million views just on that video alone. So yeah, the socials was something that I failed to consider, but I'm again very grateful that it ended up the way that it did.
Definitely a very clever strategy for virility, for sure. I mean, look, we could talk all day, but I really want to keep these episodes tight. So I want to ask you a final question, if I can, Annabel. If you could travel back in time, what advice would you give yourself when you were starting out?
I mean, there's so many things that I didn't realize I was sort of getting myself into. I think that I was incredibly naive, but that was also my superpower for sure. I think that when it comes to my personality and I've always been very confident. I've always been self-assured, always knew who I was from a very early age. My parents can attest to that. I definitely wasn't the easiest child. I was very stubborn, very headstrong, still am. To me, especially in school, I was incredibly insecure about those things about myself. I always felt like people kind of palmed me off as someone who was very brash, sort of too confident, too cocky, too arrogant. Those are things that I always sort of thought myself to be. And then it wasn't until I started my own business and started to actually validate my own self-worth and the things that I thought about myself were actually things that, yeah, they do hold me in good stead and are my superpower. That's when I sort of just like look back on my younger self and I feel sorry for her that, that was something that I was ever insecure about, because I'm so proud of the things that I've managed to achieve just through, my own sense of self-worth. So if you're ever feeling like people misunderstand you, just know that, you've got a lot to give and it all will make sense at one point in time.
That is such a powerful lesson. And I think a lot of our listeners will relate to that. I know certainly in the entrepreneurial world, most entrepreneurs can attest to a story of feeling in some way a failure at school. I certainly was. I was a C student. I actually thought I was actually really not clever at all.
And I thought I was incredibly dumb.
Yeah,
like
totally.
there was so many, like I was really bad at like English. Like I was just like, I don't want to write an essay. This is so dumb. But like I loved music. I was a classically trained violinist for 12 years. Did a lot of really creative things. Loved maths, loved music, whatever. But I really struggled with a few subjects, especially. And like having gone to the school that I went to, there were a lot of really high performers. And I think that I was always benchmarking myself against people that were obviously incredibly good at things. Maybe that just comes with, age and you being young and sort of have nothing else to sort of like benchmark yourself against, right? And it's not until you sort of go into the real world where you sort of understand like what your purpose is. I feel sorry for like how lost I was and how sad I was when I had nothing to be sad about, to be honest.
Totally. Really good advice for our listeners. And certainly I'm raising a 14-year-old and I can relate to that with her. She doesn't feel like she gets school. She feels dumb. She feels all those things. But I am so confident she's going to be a kick-ass woman when she's an adult. And I just need to hold her alive and happy and trying to keep some self-confidence intact until I can get her to a place where she can see her strengths as you and I have found as adults. So Annabel, it's been delightful to have you on the podcast today. Can you give us a couple of your social handles so listeners can go and follow you?
You can follow Clutch Glue on TikTok, Instagram, wherever you want to find us. Our social handle is at clutch_glue. It's an easy one. If you want to follow me personally, my Instagram is at Annabel_Hay.
Thanks, beautiful, for tuning in to another episode of She Talks. I hope today's conversation sparked ideas, gave you strategies that you can put into action, and will reminded you that you're never alone on this journey. If you loved this episode, then head over to shecom.co for today's show notes, exclusive freebies, and special offers from our sponsors. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe so that you never miss a future episode. Until next time, gorgeous, keep showing up, keep building, and most importantly, keep talking.